So you started building your Framer website and it looks all nice and great on the canvas, but as soon as you preview it on a larger screen, everything falls apart. You see, the problem here is that you jumped into Framer and started building websites without learning the fundamentals of responsiveness. But don't worry, it's better late than never. In this video, I'm teaching you the website structure used by Framer experts that you can reuse for all of your future projects. So by the end of the video, you're going to have all the techniques you need so you can build responsive websites confidently right inside of Framer. My name is Nandi, this is Framer University, and let's get started. I'm going to break this video up into 4 sections. First, we're going to identify the issue. Then, we're going to learn the basics of responsiveness with stacks and relative positioning. After that, we're going to put everything into practice and fix a messy website by implementing the correct page structure on it. And then, we're going to end the video by optimizing everything for smaller devices. So without any further ado, let's jump into the first section and see what is the issue that we are facing right here. So as you can see, here I am right inside of Framer, and I have this little project here. It's really important that I'm going to leave a remix link for this project in the description, so you can remix it, copy it to your account, and you can, play around with the file as I'm showing you different things here in this video. I think it's important to also try these things that you see in the video yourself, because that's how you're really gonna learn the things that I'm teaching you right here. So first of all, what I want to do is I want to identify the issue that we're facing right here. So we have this website. This is just the hero section for demonstration. If I look at this on the canvas right here where I was designing it, everything looks nice, everything looks great. But as soon as I go to the preview mode, so I click this little button and then I put it to full screen, this is what I see. Everything is messy. It's not the same thing that I saw right here. As you can see, as I start adjusting the width of this viewport, it's just not responsive. Everything changes its position. So why is this happening? The reason for this is basically the absolute positioning. Everything on this page right now is absolutely positioned. If I click this text layer, you can see on the right, type absolute. If I click this text below that, type absolute. If I click this button, the same is visible on the right panel. And basically this is what we see inside of projects created by beginners. They put everything inside of the website with absolute positioning because they see that, oh, it's so cool. I can move it around freely, these elements, and then I can just put together a website. It looks super good here, but then they preview it and they see that, oh, it's not that easy. And it not only has this issue with the different widths of the site, it also has a different issue. So let's say I want to have like another text layer right here. So if I duplicate this text layer with Command and D, I have to manually position it right here. I have to also move this button to the bottom of the website slightly. And the same happens if I decide that I want to have an additional line in the title. Everything will have to be manually, repositioned, and this is not great. But we want to create a responsive, flexible website that is easy to maintain. We have to use a different structure, which is called relative positioning. So if I go to the right panel and click this little type absolute, you're going to see that I have all the other positioning types right here. So I have absolute, relative, fixed, and sticky. But you can see that the relative positioning is not available here. I cannot click it. So how can I make sure that relative positioning is available for us? Well, we basically have to turn the element's parent frame into a stack. So first of all, let's identify the element that we are trying to set to relative positioning. It is this text layer in this case. It is right here on our layers panel. You can see it on the left. And we can identify the parent frame here. You can see that this desktop frame is wrapping this text layer right here. So we have this desktop, and these elements right here are the children layers of this desktop parent frame. So to unlock relative positioning for these layers within, we have to click the desktop, and on the right panel we have to turn it into a stack. We can do that by clicking this little layout button right here. You can see that when I click it, all of these elements jump into their relative position. If I select this title right here, you can see that now the type is set to relative positioning. Really, really nice. And you can see that all other layers have switched to relative positioning. So let's see what can I do now with this little title here. First of all, I cannot place it anywhere because as you can see, if I move it to the right a little bit, it just jumps back. However, what I can do is I can reorder it. So for example, I can reorder it with these other elements and I can place it to the bottom and it will be the last element, and you can see that other elements are like swapping positions with it. So you can see that free positioning that we had with absolute positioning is no longer available. I cannot put it anywhere on the site. But then how do we position it? How these relatively positioned frames within here are actually positioned? So what determines their position? Basically, the parent. Because the parent, which is a desktop frame, has been actually turned into a stack, and that stack has the layout properties on the right panel. So you can see that it has a direction, it's either horizontal or vertical. So if you see, I changed the direction to horizontal, everything is now placed right next to each other. If I switch it to vertical, everything is right below each other. I can also change the gap to change the space between these elements, and I can change the alignment, the distribute and everything, but I highly recommend you to play around with this yourself, because you're not really gonna learn it by just watching this video as I'm playing around with the layout properties. Really feel free to stop the video for a second and just play around with it yourself. But yeah, as you can see, we also have wrap here, which basically wraps elements into new lines when they exceed the width of their parent. So for example, if this wrapping is set to yes now, you can see that everything will be jumping into new lines in case it doesn't fit into the frame anymore. If the wrapping is not activated, then everything will just go outside of this frame. So you can see that with the parent frame set to a stack, we are defining the rules of how the relatively positioned elements within should be positioned with these properties on the right panel. So all children elements within this parent that are positioned relatively will be following these rules. So basically like a good kid who is following their parents' rules. But what if we want to have a children element within this frame that is not following these rules and not, adopting to these different layout options that we are changing right here on the right panel? Can we do something like that? Yes, of course we can. We can still set a layer to absolute positioning on the right panel, even if it's within a stack, and then we can position it anywhere. So it's no longer going to be a part of the flow of the stack. So now you can see this little heart is absolutely positioned and I can move it anywhere, but this title is still relatively positioned, so I can reorder it with the other relatively positioned elements. And if I have maybe one less line, everything will adopt nicely. If I have multiple text layers, everything will adopt nicely. If I remove elements, everything jumps back to their position. So yeah, it is a really nice and responsive structure that we can use to make sites that are actually responsive and they look great on all viewports and all devices. But when we have a stack frame, we not only get relatively positioned elements within, but we also unlock relative sizing options for these relatively positioned elements. So for example, this title here is relatively positioned, and if I go to the right panel and check out the width and the height, you can see that I can change this to fill, which is not available for absolutely positioned elements. I can check this heart, it's absolutely positioned, and you can see that fill is not available. So I can change the width to fill, and it will responsively fill up the width of the website right now as I adjust this viewport. So if I take a look at this, you're going to see that this text will break into new lines nicely as my viewport starts getting a little bit smaller. Then we also unlock fit height, which basically means that it will nicely fit the content within. So in this case, for the text layer, if this text layer will have multiple lines, the frame of the text will nicely adapt to it. So that's also a really nice thing to have. So you can see that with stacks and relative positioning, we can create really cool layouts. So for example, here we have a frame which is turned into a stack, and then it has one children element, which is this text layer. If we utilize relative sizing options, we can fix the responsiveness here, because as you can see now, if you would look at this on a mobile viewport, the text wouldn't really adapt nicely. It's because it is set to fixed width. If we switch it to fill, because it was unlocked with relative positioning, it will nicely adapt to different widths. And then I can take this to the next level by selecting the stack and then switching that to fit height, so it's always fitting the height within, which is the text layer. So if the text layer is taller, then the stack will also get a larger height. And then to make it look a little bit better, I can tweak the layout properties on the right panel for the stack, maybe add some padding, and now we have some breathing room around the edges. So just to recap what we learned so far, basically by default when you're building websites inside the Framer, you're going to be placing elements on the website with absolute positioning because that's the default behavior in Framer. You have to manually turn the parent frames into stacks, so within these stacks you unlock relative positioning for the elements. These relatively positioned elements will nicely be positioned according to their parent rules, which is defined on the right properties panel under the layout section. And if we still want elements that do not follow the rules of their parent, we can set them to absolute positioning and just freely position them anywhere within the stack. We also unlock relative sizing options for these relatively positioned elements, and this allows us to create really nice and responsive setups, which are really flexible and easy to maintain. So for example, we can set the width of certain elements to fill and the height to fit content, which is like a best practice when building Framer websites. So now that we know these and we learned a bunch of things about stacks and relative positioning, what about putting everything into practice and fixing a really messy website inside the Framer by using the right page structure? So in the Remixed Framer project, you can also find this page. If you go to the left panel and click pages, you're going to find the starter page. That's what you have to click, because there you're going to have this messy page and you can optimize it with me. And by the way, before we jump in and start optimizing this, I just want to quickly say that if you learned something from this video so far, please make sure to give it a like and also subscribe, because that's how I know that you guys are enjoying the content and that I should keep sharing these for free. So yeah, let's get right into fixing this messy page. If I adjust the width of this page, you can see that it doesn't really look great. Also below here, it's just a mess. And that's why it's really like tricky inside of Framer, because you might think that, it looks great on the canvas, but it was positioned absolutely, like every layer is positioned absolutely, so you cannot really expect more than just a site that looks like this on larger screens. So yeah, let's quickly fix this with stacks and relative sizing options. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just grab everything, put right here to the canvas outside of the main desktop breakpoint, and then I'm going to put everything back one by one. I think this is also great for you if you might have like a site that is not structured properly. You can also, maybe fix that by watching this part of the video and seeing how I do it right here. So the first thing that I usually do when I start creating websites in Framer is I turn this desktop breakpoint into a layout. So now this is basically a stack. The direction here is usually vertical because the sections within will be placed right below each other, and then the distribute is start. So the first section will start at the top. And then the alignment is center, and then the gap is usually 0 because I don't want to have any space between these section frames. So basically that's all we do on the right layout properties panel. Then we can start creating the first section. So basically a section will be just a frame on the canvas. So I'm going to press F on my keyboard and then draw a frame within this desktop breakpoint. And we have already learned that in order to have this as a responsive element or a responsive section, we have to set width fill, so it's adapting to different width changes. So let's set the width to fill, and then the height, we can set it to 800 maybe, and then I'm gonna also remove its fill color. Now we have this frame here, maybe call this hero, because here we're gonna have all of the content that is placed within the hero. Yeah, basically now if I add some elements to this hero, so maybe I grab this title, you're gonna see that within this hero, this title is absolutely positioned because the hero itself is not a stack. We only turned the desktop breakpoint into stack, but now this hero needs to be turned into stack as well. So let's go to the right panel and click the layout button. So now it's perfectly turned into a stack. So I can place in the title. So it is right here, but you can see that this is also not responsive because the width is set to fit. So we have to set it to fill. And then now it's gonna be really nice. Yes, perfect. And then I will just grab the next text layer and then maybe this button as well, and then set these to fill as well. But you can see that here, I don't really want to have this subtitle in one line. I want to make sure that it breaks into multiple lines, and then I can do it really easily by adding a max of it to the subtitle. So it will still fill up the available space, but it will not grow bigger than a certain size. So maybe fixed 360 pixels. And then we have this button here, which is, by the way, a stack. So this button is a stack, and then this text layer within is relatively positioned. The text layer is set to fit content, so the width of the text layer is adapting based on the letters that we write within. And then the parent, which is the button frame, is set to width fit, so it's fitting the text layer within. So this creates this structure for us where we can remove certain words, add certain words, and then everything will nicely adapt, and the button will grow or get smaller depending on the content within. We already know that these relatively positioned elements are positioned accordingly to their parent's stack settings. So if I select the hero, go to the right panel, I can adjust the gap here, and they'll have more space between each other. But we can also come here to the canvas and just grab this right here to adjust the gap. So I might want to have 24 between these, and yeah, it's very good. Let's also preview this, and yeah, it looks nice and responsive. I recommend you to take a look at your website while building it for yourself and see if it's responsive or you need to change anything while you're building it. So yeah, now we can also grab this framer logo, put it right here. And yeah, it looks really nice. But now we might wonder, how do we make sure that, for example, certain elements are a little bit closer to each other and then certain elements are not that close to each other. So for example, I want to have a little bit less space between the title and the subtitle. How do I do that? Basically, we can just group them together, sort of. So select both of them. I'm just pressing Shift on my keyboard while clicking this other element as well. And now both of them are selected. And I can just right click and add stack. And now these two elements are wrapped in another stack. So I can rename this stack to title plus sub. And so now this title plus subtext is wrapping the title and the subtitle. So within this, I can now change the gap to a different size, maybe 20 or 16. And then the hero stack can have a little bit more gap. So now here we have more space, and then here we have less space. Okay, so far it looks really good. But now let's place in these little illustrations as well, these little doodles. And you can see that relative positioning is not really a great option for these because we want to kind of position them right here. But if I'm moving it to that position, it's just snapping back to its relative position. So here, absolute positioning will be a perfect solution for us. So we can set this to absolute. It will no longer follow the parent rules. And then I can just move it right here, maybe to the left. And then this one will be also absolutely positioned, and it will be here on the right. And then here, we might as well learn something new about absolute positioning. As you can see, if I select this right one here, you can see that for absolute positioning, we get these layout pins. So for example, right now, the left layout pin and the top is activated. This basically means that this element will always keep 211 pixels distance from the top of its parent and 883 pixels from the left side of its parent. So in order to have a better structure for this absolute position element, so it doesn't go around like this, we can have a little bit smarter structure. The thing that we have to remember is that these layout pins are basically pinning it to the parent frame. And the parent frame is the hero, and the hero is just adapting to different width changes on the website. So for example, if we look at this on a large monitor, the width of the hero is like adjusting like crazy. So what we can do is we can define like a max width for the hero as well, so it will not grow bigger than that certain size. So I can set max width, maybe 1000 or maybe 800 pixels. And then I can get this heart, and then I don't even know. Yeah, the dual faces here on the right, we couldn't see it because it was outside of the hero. But now I can move it right here, and then maybe pin it to the right side instead of the left side. And now it will always keep this distance from the right. So let's preview this. You can see that it looks really nice. Of course, on mobile devices, we're gonna have to like tweak the positioning, but for now, for desktop, it looks great. And then we can do the same with the heart. We can place it to the left, and then also pin it to the left, maybe 20 pixels from the left and 244 from the top. And yeah, now we have this layout right here, which looks really nice. We will adjust it a little bit later for tablet and phone. Okay, so now that we have this, we can also place in our image inside of the hero section. So I'm going to Command and X here to cut it and place it onto our clipboard, and then Command and V to place it within the hero section. So you can see that now this doesn't really look great, and it's because the hero section is set to a fixed height, which is 800 pixels. So I either have to manually, make it larger, or we could use fit content, which basically makes sure that the height of this section is adapting to the content within. So if I have more images, it will be larger. But this looks perfect. However, I think we could have a little bit more space from the top. We can do that really easily by going to the right panel of the hero section and adjusting the top padding only to push it down a little bit. So now we get this position, which is basically perfect for us. So now this is good, but I think the image here is set to width fixed. So if we set it to fill, it will also nicely adapt to different width changes, as you can see. Pretty good. And yeah, basically we have created the hero section. It is right here, as you can see, and we can maybe duplicate this or just draw another frame below that, remove the fill color of that section, set it to fill, and then turn it into layout. And now we have another section on our website. And then one extra thing that we need to do with the desktop breakpoint is that we have to set it to fit height, because now if we duplicate this section, you can see that the actual website is not adapting to it. So if we set the height to fit content on the desktop, you can see that with more sections added, the height of the site will also grow. So here within this section, I'm going to also rename it to section. So within this section, I have to place in these layout placeholder elements. So we're going to have a image on the left, and then the text and the button on the right. So for this, we can have like a frame within, which is like a content frame that has all the content. So let's call this content. I can set this to fill width and then remove the fill, set it to a layout. And then what I'm going to do with this is I'm going to add a max width to it, so it's not going to grow bigger than a certain size. So we're going to nicely keep that 800 max width. Maybe that's, I think, what we had on this hero section as well. So now within this content, I think what we're going to do is we're going to just have two columns. So one here containing the image, and then one here containing the text layers. So I can just press F on my keyboard and create two other frames. This will be column 1, and then let's duplicate that. That will be column 2. Remove the fill color on all of them, set their width to fill, and the height can stay on this fixed value for now. And you can see that both of them are nicely filling up the available space, and between them we have 10 gap according to the content stack, but we can increase that to 28. And then now I can just grab this placeholder, I can place it within column 1, and then you can see that it's not really having the right size here. We can set it to relative positioning first of all, but we don't really have that because the column is not yet turned into a stack. So let's add the stack here. And now the placeholder within can be relatively positioned. Set the width fill. Maybe I'm gonna actually set the height to 400 and I'm gonna lock the aspect ratio. This will basically mean that whenever the width is changing, the height is going to adopt it in a way that it keeps the aspect ratio of the image. Okay, that is pretty good. Now I can set the column here instead of fixed height to fit content. So it fits the image within or this placeholder, and then it's pretty much set. I can also set the content frame here to fit height, so it will nicely fit this image again. And then now we can place in the titles here, the title and the subtitle, and the link button inside of the column too. But before that, let's turn that into a layout as well, or a stack. And then let's just grab this, place it within that, this one as well, and the button too. Now I'm gonna just come here and set all of them to fill width. And then this button, I think it shouldn't be fill width, it just should stick to the left. So we have to set the column 2's alignment to the left. You can see that the responsiveness will have to be adjusted on smaller viewports. So you can see that the image just gets too small right here, but you're gonna see it's super easy to optimize this for smaller devices. Maybe if we want to have a little bit more space between these, we can adjust the gap here, so maybe 50. And yeah, I think that's it. One last thing that we can do is we can change the section here to fit height, so it will also nicely fit the content within, which is the content frame. And then maybe to have a little bit more space on the bottom on the top, we can add top 100 and bottom 100 padding. And then one thing I noticed here is that when I make this smaller, you can see that we don't really have space on the left and on the right. These elements are literally touching the edges of the website. We can fix that by going to the section and adding 20/20 on the right and on the left. This little padding will ensure that we have some space between the content and the edge of the site. So you can see that now if I resize, we have that 20 pixel on the left and on the right. Another great practice to do when you're creating these websites is that you basically set the correct HTML tag for these sections on the right panel. So for example, the hero can be a section, so I'm gonna add the tag section to it. And then I can add the same tag to the section below that, accessibility tag and section. This basically helps the browser identify different elements on your website. What we also usually do is we wrap all the sections within the website into the main stack. So I can just select both of them, hit Option Command Enter, which is basically the shortcut for adding a stack. So now this stack wraps the hero and the section. The stack can be called main. So this is the main container on the website. And on the right, this can be accessibility tag and main. Where is the main? It is right here. So now if I add more sections, it is going to be within the main container. And then I can also set the gap here inside of the main to 0. And so basically within the main container, we're going to have all your sections. But for example, the navigation bar will be outside of this main. And also the footer will not be part of the main container on the site. So now that we have a perfectly looking site on desktop, we can optimize this for mobile really quickly. And you're going to see that it's going to be really simple. And the reason for this is because we used relative positioning and stacks. So add breakpoint, tablet, and add another breakpoint for phone. So you can see that in Framer, we usually start, not usually, but all the time, we start by designing the desktop, and then we can, take a look at the tablet and the phone a little bit later to see if there are any, adjustments needed. Basically on tablet, I think everything looks cool. Nothing needs to be, changed. And you can see that on phone, we have some, things to do. So first of all, I think that this title is too large. We could just simply change the size of this title right here in the right panel to optimize it, but I think there's a better way of doing that, which is by creating text styles. So I'm going to quickly show you how to do that. On the right panel, when selecting the text layer, it's really important to do it on the desktop primary breakpoint because that's how this change is going to apply on all other breakpoints. So on the right panel, we're going to go style, new style is going to be a heading 1 style, and then I'm going to edit this. Now it has the correct font and font size and everything. And I can just add breakpoints here. It literally created a tablet and a phone breakpoint size for this. And you can see that on tablet now it is 69, but I can adjust this size. And then on phone, you can see that it is 55, but I think it should be a little bit smaller, maybe 46. And yeah, this is how easy it is to optimize your text across different breakpoints. And the great thing about these text styles is that you can apply this to multiple text layers across your site, and then you can just adjust their responsiveness here in the master style. Yeah, basically that's it. I think we could reposition these little SVGs here, maybe put them a little bit to the top. We can also resize them. And basically these changes will only be applied on the phone breakpoint. So you can see that if I make this bigger, everything, jumps back to its position. Okay, so this looks great. The rest of the hero is cool, but here this section is not really cool. And since we're using stacks, we can just change the direction from horizontal to vertical. So now the image will be on the top, and then the text will be on the bottom. So column 1 that we created will be on the top, and column 2 that will be on the bottom. And we can just change the gap here to a little bit smaller size. We can also change the column 2 to maybe fit content. Basically that's it. Maybe have a little bit more gap then, so maybe we can put actually back that 50 gap. As you can see, all the properties that we changed on this phone breakpoint has this blue color. It means that it has an override. Well, we can reset it by clicking that, and now it has the property that we set on the desktop breakpoint, which was 50. And basically that's it. The website is optimized, so we can take a look at this. On desktop, it looks great. If I resize the viewport, it looks great. And that other section is also nicely adapting. On the phone breakpoint, it switches to vertical direction. And yeah, so basically that's it for this video. Before I end it, I want to do a quick recap of all the things we learned today. So basically we have to use a relatively positioned frames within stacks to create these nice and flexible responsive layouts. And we need to turn our main desktop breakpoint into a stack and then place all of our sections within that. And these sections are usually set to width fill, so they're nicely adapting to the width of the website. And the height is usually fit content, so the content within will determine the height of these sections. And then since we're using stacks, further optimizing for smaller devices will be super easy by just clicking a couple of properties on the right layout properties panel. Basically that's it for this video. Make sure to drop your questions in the comments if you have any. I would love to help you out. Make sure to like this video if you enjoyed it. Go to framer.university for other remixable resources, components that you can use to learn Framer faster. I also have a bunch of other lessons there, so you can find tutorials about creating navigation bars, footer sections, or complete websites. Make sure to subscribe for more, and I'm gonna see you in the next one.